The searing heat from the twin suns of Xylo scorched the control panel as Kyle Brennan wrestled with the malfunctioning navigation system. His freighter, the Comet Chaser, shrieked through the alien atmosphere, its hull protesting the strain of the uncontrolled descent. "Come on, you rust bucket!" Kyle slammed his fist on the console, the ground rushing up to meet him with alarming speed. The ship's AI sputtered through the damaged speakers, impact imminent. Survival probability: 22%. The crash came in stages. First, the starboard thrusters failed, then the port wing clipped a dune, sending the ship into a dizzying spin. Kyle's head snapped back and forth, his safety harness his only savior from becoming a crimson stain across the cockpit. Metal screamed as the Comet Chaser plowed a long furrow through the crimson sand. When the world finally stopped spinning, Kyle found himself hanging upside down, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. The desert suns blazed through the cracked viewport, turning the cockpit into a furnace. "Status report," he croaked. Only silence answered. The AI was gone. Kyle dropped to what was once the ceiling, his left ankle throbbing with pain. Nothing felt broken, thankfully, but he knew he'd be feeling this crash for a while. Assuming he survived that long. He grabbed the emergency kit, his portable atmospheric analyzer, and the remaining water. The comm system sputtered weakly when he tried it. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Captain Kyle Brennan of the independent freighter Comet Chaser. Anyone receiving?" Only static replied. Outside, the heat was a suffocating blanket. Two suns hung in the lavender sky, their combined glare transforming the endless dunes into a shimmering expanse. Kyle's analyzer beeped, displaying grim readings. The air was barely breathable, and the temperature was already well over 115 degrees Fahrenheit. "Fantastic," he muttered, testing his ankle gingerly. Stranded on Space Death Valley, without even a cactus. A low rumble drew his attention. On the horizon, a colossal wall of sand was approaching, a dust storm that would dwarf Earth's worst. Just what I needed, he thought, realizing he needed shelter immediately. The Comet Chaser was too damaged to offer any protection from a storm of that magnitude. He limped toward a group of rock formations in the distance, hoping they might offer some refuge. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought the heat was playing tricks on his eyes. She emerged from behind a rock like a desert mirage, tall, elegant, and undeniably alien. Her skin was a vibrant shade of violet, etched with faint, luminous patterns that pulsed weakly in the harsh light. Despite her evident exhaustion, she carried herself with a regal air, her movements graceful even as she stumbled slightly. She was also, Kyle couldn't help but notice, breathtakingly stunning, with a captivating beauty that would have captivated attention anywhere in the galaxy. Her attire consisted of tattered remnants of what looked like ceremonial garb, ripped and sandblasted. Their eyes met. Hers were silver, literally glowing with an inner light that seemed to be dimming with every second. "Well," she said in flawless English, her voice a blend of authority and desperation, "it seems we're both having a rather trying day." Then she collapsed. Kyle rushed forward, his own injuries forgotten. He caught her just before she hit the sand, surprised by how light she felt. Up close, the glowing patterns on her skin were barely visible, like fading circuitry. "Hey, stay with me," he said, cradling her head. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Her eyes fluttered open. "My name is Lyra," she whispered. "And unless you assist me, I will be gone before that storm reaches us. I have medical supplies, and my—" "No," she interrupted, her hand gripping his arm with unexpected strength. "What I require is not found in any first aid kit. My species needs biological interaction to survive. Without a partner, our life essence diminishes." Kyle blinked. "I don't understand." A faint smile touched her violet lips. "Physical closeness, human connection. That's what sustains us. And right now," she shuddered, "right now, I am running out of time." Kyle felt his cheeks flush despite the scorching heat. "Wait, you're saying you need—" "Close proximity," Lyra said matter-of-factly. It would buy me some time, though it won't be enough for long-term survival. The storm was closing in. Sand stung Kyle's face as the wind picked up. This isn't exactly how I usually meet women, he muttered. Lyra's glow dimmed further. I'm not asking for courtship, Captain. I'm asking to live. Kyle looked at her, then at the approaching wall of sand, then back at her fading light. Ah, what the hell, he said, and gently pressed his lips to hers. The scorching glare of Xylo's twin suns beat down on the cracked control panel as Jake Hartigan fought a losing battle with the sputtering navigation system. His freighter, the Star Wanderer, shrieked a tortured protest as it plunged uncontrollably through the alien sky. Hold together, you hunk of junk! Jake yelled, pounding the console as the crimson ground rushed up with terrifying speed. A distorted voice crackled from the damaged speakers, warning, imminent impact. Survival probability, 18%. The impact was a series of brutal jolts. First, the starboard engine cut out, then the port wing slammed into a dune, throwing the ship into a sickening spiral. Jake's head whipped back and forth, the safety harness his only defense against becoming a bloody mess on the cockpit walls. The Star Wanderer screamed as it plowed a deep furrow through the red sand. When the violent spinning finally ceased, Jake found himself dangling upside down, blood oozing from a cut over his left eye. The desert suns blazed through the shattered viewport, baking the cockpit like an oven. Damage report, he rasped. Only silence answered. The ship's AI was offline. Jake dropped to what had been the ceiling, his right ankle twisting painfully. Thankfully, nothing seemed broken, but he knew he'd be paying for this crash later. If he lived that long. He retrieved the emergency kit, his portable atmospheric scanner, and the last of his water. The comm system sputtered weakly when he powered it on. Mayday, Mayday. This is Captain Jake Hartigan of the independent freighter Star Wanderer. Does anyone copy? Only static replied. Stepping outside, Jake was hit by a wall of suffocating heat. Two suns hung in the lavender sky, their combined glare transforming the vast dunes into a shimmering mirage. His atmospheric scanner beeped, displaying dire warnings. The air was barely breathable, and the temperature was already soaring past 120 degrees. Wonderful, he muttered, gingerly testing his ankle. Marooned on a cosmic death trap, without so much as a tumbleweed. A low rumble caught his attention. On the distant horizon, a monstrous wall of sand was approaching, a dust storm that would dwarf anything Earth had ever seen. Just what I needed, he thought grimly, realizing shelter was his top priority. The Star Wanderer was too badly damaged to protect him from a storm of that magnitude. He limped toward a distant cluster of rock formations, hoping to find some kind of refuge. That's when he saw her. At first, he wondered if the heat was causing hallucinations. Emerging from behind a rock like a desert phantom, she was tall, elegant, and undeniably alien. Her skin shimmered a vibrant turquoise, etched with faint, luminous patterns that pulsed weakly in the intense sunlight. Despite her obvious exhaustion, she carried herself with a regal grace, her movements fluid even as she stumbled. And Jake couldn't deny, she was stunning, possessing a captivating beauty that would have been striking anywhere in the galaxy. Her clothes were tattered remnants of what looked like ceremonial robes, ripped and sandblasted. Their eyes met. Hers were silver, glowing with an inner light that seemed to be dimming with each passing second. Well, she said in perfect English, her voice a blend of authority and desperation, it seems we are both experiencing a somewhat challenging day. Then she collapsed. Jake rushed toward her, his own injuries forgotten. He caught her before she hit the sand, surprised by how light she felt. Up close, the glowing patterns on her skin were almost invisible, like fading circuits. Hey, stay with me, he said, supporting her head. What's wrong? Are you injured? Her eyes fluttered open. My name is Alana, she whispered. And unless you provide assistance, I will perish before that storm reaches us. I have medical supplies, and my... No, she interrupted, her hand gripping his arm with surprising strength. What I need cannot be found in a first aid kit. My species requires biological exchange to survive. Without a partner, our life essence deteriorates. Jake blinked. I'm not sure I understand. A faint smile touched her turquoise lips. Physical closeness, human contact. That sustains us. And right now, she shuddered, right now, I am running out of time. Jake felt his face flush despite the scorching heat. Wait, are you saying you need close proximity? Alana said matter-of-factly. It would provide temporary relief, but it's insufficient for long-term survival. The storm was rapidly closing in. Sand stung Jake's face as the wind picked up. This isn't exactly how I typically make introductions, he mumbled. Alana's glow dimmed further. I'm not seeking romance, Captain. I'm seeking to live. Jake looked at her, then at the approaching wall of sand, then back at her fading light. All right, what the hell, he said, and gently pressed his lips to hers. The scorching twin suns of Xylos beat down on the fractured control panel as Mark Talon struggled with the failing navigation of his freighter, the Stardust Drifter. The ship screamed through the turbulent alien atmosphere, its hull groaning under the stress of the uncontrolled descent. Come on, you old crate! Mark shouted, slamming his fist on the console, the crimson ground rushing towards him with alarming speed. The ship's AI, its voice distorted through the damaged speakers, announced, imminent impact. Survival probability 28%. The crash was a chaotic ballet of destruction. The aft thrusters sputtered and died, followed by the port wing clipping a sand dune, sending the freighter into a violent spin. Mark's head snapped back and forth, the safety harness his only protection from being splattered across the cockpit. Metal shrieked as the Stardust Drifter plowed a deep gash through the scarlet sand. When the spinning finally stopped, Mark found himself hanging upside down, blood dripping from a cut over his right eye. The harsh desert suns blazed through the cracked viewport, turning the cockpit into a furnace. Report, he croaked. Only silence answered. The AI was gone. Mark unbuckled, falling heavily onto what was formerly the ceiling. His left ankle screamed in protest, sending jolts of pain up his leg. He felt around gingerly. Nothing broken, thankfully, but he'd be nursing this injury for a while. Assuming he survived long enough. He grabbed the emergency medical kit, the portable atmospheric scanner, and his remaining water supply. The comms system crackled weakly when he tried it. Mayday, Mayday. This is Captain Mark Talon of the independent freighter Stardust Drifter. Is anybody receiving? Only static replied. Outside, the heat was a palpable force. Two suns glared down from the lilac sky, their light transforming the endless dunes into a shimmering expanse. Mark's scanner beeped, displaying ominous readings. The air was barely breathable, the temperature already well over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Just peachy, he mumbled, testing his ankle cautiously. Stranded on Mars 2.0, without even a rock for shade. A low rumble caught his attention. On the horizon, a monstrous wall of sand was approaching, a dust storm that would make Earth's worst look like a light breeze. Of course, he muttered, realizing he needed to find shelter, and fast. The Stardust Drifter was too damaged to offer any real protection from a storm of that magnitude. He limped towards a cluster of rock formations in the distance, hoping they might offer some refuge. That's when he saw her. Emerging from behind a rock like a figment of his imagination, she was tall, graceful, and undeniably otherworldly. Her skin shimmered a vibrant emerald green, etched with delicate, glowing patterns that pulsed faintly in the harsh light. Despite her evident fatigue, she carried herself with an air of dignity, her movements elegant even as she stumbled. She was also, Mark couldn't deny, incredibly striking, possessing a captivating beauty that would have turned heads anywhere in the galaxy. Her clothing consisted of torn remnants of what looked like ceremonial robes, ripped and sandblasted. Their eyes met. Hers were silver, glowing with an internal light that seemed to flicker weakly. Well, she said in flawless galactic standard, her voice a blend of composure and desperation, it seems we are both enduring a rather challenging afternoon. Then she swayed and collapsed. Mark rushed forward, his own injuries forgotten. He caught her before she hit the sand, surprised by her lightness. Up close, the glowing patterns on her skin were almost invisible, like fading circuitry. "Hey, stay with me," he said, gently supporting her head. "What's the matter? Are you injured?" Her eyes fluttered open. "I am called Elara," she whispered. "And unless I receive assistance, I will not survive this approaching storm." "I have medical supplies?" "No," she interrupted, her hand gripping his arm with surprising strength. "My needs are not met by your medical technology. My species requires biological energy exchange to live. Without a partner, our vital essence dissipates." Mark blinked. "I don't follow." A faint smile touched her emerald lips. "Physical closeness, human connection. That is our sustenance. And at this moment," she shuddered, "at this moment, my life force is fading." Mark felt his cheeks flush despite the oppressive heat. "Hold on, are you saying you need proximity?" Elara said simply. "It will provide a temporary reprieve, but will not be enough for long-term survival." The storm was rapidly closing in. Sand stung Mark's face as the wind whipped around them. "This isn't exactly how I pictured meeting someone," he mumbled. Elara's glow dimmed further. "I am not seeking companionship, Captain. I am seeking to live." Mark looked at her, at the approaching wall of sand, then back at her fading light. He sighed. "All right, then," he said, and gently leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The dwindling power in the emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows across the cave walls as Elias Vance stared at the alien woman across from him. He'd only known her for a handful of hours, but the events of those hours felt like a lifetime. "So," he started, trying for a casual tone that felt utterly foreign in the echoing silence of their underground refuge, "your people, they do this often?" Kira, the alien princess whose life he'd inadvertently become entangled with, tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. The luminescent patterns that traced her sapphire skin pulsed gently, a rhythmic glow that had become strangely comforting in the oppressive darkness of the cave. "Do what, Captain?" she asked, her voice a melodic counterpoint to the howling sandstorm raging outside. "Crash land on desolate planets and require intimate human contact for survival?" "No, not typically." Elias shifted uncomfortably. The memory of their first kiss, the strange surge of energy that had flowed between them, still lingered, a phantom tingle on his lips. "Right," he mumbled, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's just, this whole situation is a bit outside my usual experience." "Indeed," Kira agreed, her silver eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Though I must admit, you adapt remarkably well for a human who stumbled into an alien bonding ritual." "Bonding ritual?" Elias echoed. "I thought you said you needed biological energy exchange." "A technicality," Kira said with a shrug that seemed almost human. "On my world, the ritual serves the same purpose. It establishes a connection, a sharing of life force that becomes self-sustaining." She paused, her gaze meeting his. "Though typically, it's preceded by a courtship period, not a near-death experience in a sandstorm." Elias chuckled dryly. "Well, there's a first time for everything, I guess. Though I have to say, this is a pretty unconventional way to start a relationship." "Relationship?" Kira echoed, tilting her head again. "Is that how humans perceive it?" "Well, yeah," Elias said, surprised. "Isn't that what this is? A connection? A bond?" Kira was silent for a moment, the luminescent patterns on her skin pulsing thoughtfully. "Perhaps," she said finally. "Perhaps it's more than that. But such things take time to unfold." Her glow dimmed slightly. "And right now, time is something I don't have in abundance." Elias's stomach twisted. He'd almost forgotten their precarious situation. Kira's life force, her very existence, was tied to his. And her light was fading. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Difficult to say," Kira replied. The bond we created, it's unstable. It requires maintenance. She reached out, her hand hovering just above his. Frequent interaction. Physical closeness. Elias swallowed hard, the implication hanging heavy in the air. He knew what she was asking, what she needed. And despite the strangeness of it all, a part of him, a primal instinct buried deep beneath layers of social conditioning, understood. He reached out, his hand meeting hers. The familiar tingle returned, stronger this time, a warm current that flowed between them, rekindling Kira's fading light. Like this? He asked, his voice hoarse. Kira nodded, her silver eyes locking onto his. Yes, she whispered. Like this? She leaned closer, her sapphire skin almost glowing in the dim light. For now. The storm raged outside, a relentless barrage of wind and sand against the cave entrance. But inside, in the small circle of light cast by the dwindling emergency lamps, something else was brewing. Something unexpected. Something that transcended the desperate circumstances that had brought them together. Something that felt, impossibly, like the beginning of something more. The dwindling emergency lights cast flickering shadows across the cavern walls as John contemplated the alien princess across from him. It had only been a few days since their unconventional first encounter, yet it felt like a lifetime. So, he began, his voice echoing in the silence, "Your people, they do this often?" Ryan tilted her head, a faint smile gracing her lips. The luminescent patterns that adorned her azure skin pulsed rhythmically, a comforting presence in the cave's oppressive darkness. "Do what, Captain?" she asked, her melodic voice a stark contrast to the sandstorm's relentless howl outside. "Crash land on inhospitable planets and require intimate human contact to survive?" "No, not typically." John shifted uncomfortably, the memory of their first kiss, the strange energy exchange, still vivid in his mind. "Right," he mumbled. "It's just, this whole thing is a bit outside my usual parameters." "Indeed," Ryan agreed, her silver eyes gleaming. "Though I must say, you've adapted remarkably well for a human who stumbled into an alien bonding ritual." "Bonding ritual?" John echoed. "I thought you said it was a biological necessity." "Semantics," Ryan said with a shrug. "On my world, the ritual serves a similar purpose. It establishes a connection, a merging of life energies, a symbiotic relationship." She paused, her gaze meeting his. "Though typically, it involves a courtship period, not a life-or-death scenario in a sandstorm." John chuckled. "Well, there's a first time for everything. Though I have to admit, this is a rather unorthodox way to start a relationship." "Relationship?" Ryan echoed, tilting her head. "Is that how humans perceive this?" "Well, isn't it?" John asked, surprised. "A connection? A bond?" Ryan was silent for a moment, the luminescent patterns on her skin pulsing thoughtfully. "Perhaps," she said softly. "Perhaps it's more than that. But such things require time to develop." Her glow dimmed slightly. "And time, as you know, is not something I have in abundance." John's stomach twisted. He'd almost forgotten their precarious situation. Ryan's life force was tied to his, and her light was fading. "How long?" he whispered. "Uncertain," Ryan replied. "The bond we forged is fragile. It requires nurturing. Frequent interaction. Close physical contact." John swallowed hard. He knew what she was asking, what she needed. And despite the strangeness, a part of him understood. He reached out, his hand covering hers. The familiar energy flowed between them, rekindling Ryan's fading light. "Like this?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Ryan nodded, her silver eyes locking onto his. "Yes," she whispered. "Like this. For now." The storm raged outside, a furious assault of wind and sand against the cave entrance. But inside, in the small circle of light cast by the fading emergency lamps, something else was taking root. Something unexpected. Something that transcended their desperate circumstances. Something that felt, incredibly, like a beginning.